My name is Margaret, and I'm 78 years old. I've lived through more Christmases than most people will see in their lifetime, but the Christmas I'm about to tell you about was the one that changed everything. It was the Christmas that taught me the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand how I got to that moment when my own son looked me in the eyes and told me I wasn't family anymore. 42 years ago, I met Robert at a church social. He was 26, I was 28, and we both believed in building something lasting together. We married within a year and bought our first little house on Maple Street with every penny we had saved. Robert worked construction, I worked as a seamstress, and together we scraped by, but we were happy. When our son David was born 3 years later, I made the decision that many women of my generation made. I quit my job to raise him properly. Robert supported that choice completely. A child needs his mother, he'd say, and our boy is going to have the best mother he could ask for. For the next 25 years, my world revolved around David. I packed his lunches every single day, attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every baseball game. When he was 8 and broke his arm falling from a tree, I slept in the hospital chair for 3 nights straight. When he struggled with math in high school, I sat with him at our kitchen table every evening until he understood every problem. I saved every penny I could from the household money Robert gave me. I'd buy generic groceries and mend our clothes instead of buying new ones. Also, I could put away money for David's college fund. By the time he graduated high school, I had saved $8,000 from years of careful budgeting. It wasn't much, but it was everything I had. Robert and I paid for David's entire college education. Not just tuition, but his apartment, his car, his books, even his spring break trips with friends. We went without new clothes, delayed fixing our roof for 2 years, and ate beans and rice some weeks just to make sure our boy never wanted for anything. When David graduated with his business degree, Robert and I were so proud we could barely contain ourselves. Our son, our only child, had made something of himself. He got a good job at an insurance company, started dating a girl named Patricia, and seemed to be building the kind of life we had dreamed he would have. David married Patricia when he was 26. The wedding cost us $14,000 money we borrowed against our house because we wanted our son to have a perfect day. Patricia seemed nice enough at first, though she was particular about things. She didn't like our old furniture when they visited, would make comments about our neighborhood, and always seemed to have suggestions about how we could improve our lives. But David was happy, and that's all that mattered to us. The first real sign of trouble came 2 years after their wedding, when Patricia got pregnant with their first child. I was overjoyed I was going to be a grandmother. I started knitting baby blankets immediately, dreaming about all the ways I could help with the baby. But Patricia had other ideas. When I offered to help with childcare after she returned to work, she smiled tightly and said, "Thanks, but we've already arranged for daycare. We want consistency in the baby's routine." When I suggested they could save money if I watched little Emma a few days a week, David backed up his wife. "Mom, Patricia knows what's best for the baby. Besides, you've never raised a child in today's world, things are different now." That comment stung more than I expected. I had raised him, hadn't I? I had given up my career, my independence, my own dreams to make sure he became the man he was today. But I swallowed my hurt and told myself they were just nervous new parents. Over the next few years, the distance grew. Phone calls became shorter and less frequent. Visits were scheduled weeks in advance and always ended earlier than planned. When their second child, Michael, was born, I wasn't even told until 2 days after the delivery. "We were just so busy at the hospital," David explained when I called, hurt and confused. "Patricia had a difficult labor and we could only handle immediate family." Immediate family. I was his mother, but somehow I wasn't immediate family. Robert died on a Tuesday morning in March 7 years ago. He had a massive heart attack while reading the newspaper at our kitchen table. One moment he was showing me an article about the local high school's championship win, and the next moment he was gone. I found myself, at 71, completely alone for the first time in my adult life. The funeral was small but beautiful. David and Patricia came, of course, and they brought Emma and Michael, who were teenagers by then. But even at my husband's funeral, I felt like an outsider in my own family. Patricia managed all the arrangements with the funeral director, David handled the financial matters, and I sat in the front pew feeling like a spectator to my own grief. After the service, as people were leaving, I overheard Patricia talking to her sister on the phone. "No, we'll probably need to keep an eye on her now," she was saying. "She's never lived alone. David thinks she might need to consider assisted living sooner rather than later." Assisted living, I was 71 in good health and fully capable of taking care of myself. But my daughter-in-law was already planning my next stage of dependence. The first few months of widowhood were the hardest of my life. The house felt enormous and empty. I would cook dinner for 2 out of habit, then realize I was alone. I would pick up the phone to call Robert about something I'd seen on the news, then remember he wasn't there to answer. David called every Sunday for the first month, then every other Sunday, then whenever he remembered. The conversations were brief and functional. "How are you doing, Mom?" "I'm managing, sweetheart. Do you need anything?" "No, I'm fine." "Okay, well, Patricia sends her love." "The kids are busy with school. I'll call you next week." But next week often became the week after that, or the week after that. As the months passed, I began to understand what Patricia had meant about keeping an eye on me, but it wasn't the kind of caring oversight I had hoped for. David started suggesting I should sell the house. "It's too big for one person, Mom. You could get a nice apartment closer to us, maybe in one of those senior communities. They have activities, other people your age." When I protested that I loved my home, that Robert and I had built our life there, that it held 40 years of memories, David would sigh impatiently. "Mom, you're being sentimental. It's not practical. The maintenance alone is more than you should handle." But I was handling it just fine. I hired a neighbor boy to mow the lawn, I had my regular handyman fix anything that needed repair, and I kept the house exactly as neat as I always had. The real issue, I began to realize, wasn't that the house was too big for me. The real issue was that David and Patricia saw it as an asset that was being wasted on me. This became clear the day David brought over some papers for me to sign. "It's just to add me to the deed," he explained, spreading documents across my kitchen table. "That way, if anything happens to you, there won't be any legal complications. It's really for your protection." I had lived 73 years without needing my son's name on my house deed, but David was insistent. "Mom, do you want Emma and Michael to have to go through probate court if something happens? This is just being responsible." Patricia nodded emphatically from her seat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had helped David with his homework for years. "Margaret, this is what everyone our age does. It just makes everything simpler." So I signed, because I trusted my son and because I couldn't imagine he would ever do anything to hurt me. That was my first mistake. The year after I added David to the deed, the suggestions became demands. "Mom, this neighborhood isn't safe anymore. Mrs. Johnson down the street was robbed last month." "Mom, you shouldn't be driving at night." "What if you have an accident?" "Mom, you're spending too much money on groceries. Do you really need name-brand cereal?" Every conversation became a critique of my choices, my independence, my ability to live my own life. And Patricia was always there, nodding along, adding her own observations about how difficult it must be for me to manage everything alone. The worst part was that David genuinely seemed to believe he was helping me. When I pushed back, he would get that patient, condescending tone that children use with difficult elderly parents. "Mom, I'm just worried about you. We all are. We want what's best for you." But what's best for me seemed to involve giving up more and more of my autonomy every month. The breaking point came 2 Christmases ago. I had been looking forward to Christmas dinner with my family for weeks. I spent days preparing my contributions, my famous apple pie that David had loved since childhood, homemade dinner rolls, and a green bean casserole that had been Robert's favorite. I wrapped presents carefully, including expensive toys for Emma and Michael and a beautiful scarf I had found for Patricia. When I arrived at David's house that Christmas morning, carrying my dishes and my bag of presents, Patricia answered the door with a strained smile. "Oh, Margaret, didn't David call you? We've had to change our plans." David appeared behind her, looking uncomfortable but not apologetic. "Mom, Patricia's parents decided to join us last minute, and we just don't have room at the table for everyone. Maybe you could come by later for dessert." I stood on their porch, holding my homemade contributions to their Christmas dinner, being told there wasn't room for me at my own son's table. Behind them, I could see the dining room table set for 8 people. There was room, there just wasn't room for me. "Of course," I said, because what else could I say? "I understand." But I didn't understand. And as I drove home with my untouched dishes and unopened presents, I realized that I had become a burden to my son, an obligation to be managed rather than a person to be loved. I spent that Christmas alone, eating a sandwich and watching old movies, trying not to think about how I had sacrificed everything for a child who couldn't spare me a chair at his table. Which brings me to last Christmas, the Christmas that changed everything. In November, I decided I needed to be more direct about what I wanted. I was 78 years old, I had been widowed for 7 years, and I was tired of spending holidays alone. I wanted to be with my family, especially my grandchildren who barely knew me anymore, so I called David 3 weeks before Christmas. "Sweetheart, I was wondering if I could join you for Christmas dinner this year. I know Patricia likes to plan ahead, so I wanted to ask early." There was a pause, then David said, "Well, Mom, let me talk to Patricia and see what we can work out." A week went by without hearing back. I called again. "David, I don't want to be a bother, but I was just wondering about Christmas dinner." "Yeah, Mom, about that. This year is going to be really complicated. Patricia's whole family is coming, and her sister's bringing her new boyfriend, and the kids have friends coming over. It's just going to be chaos." I don't mind chaos, I said. I'd be happy to help with the cooking or cleaning up or watching the younger children. I just want to be part of the family. Another pause. I'll talk to Patricia again. But I knew, even as he said it, that Patricia had already given her answer. On December 22nd, I decided to drive over to their house. I told myself I was just dropping off presents, but really I was hoping to be invited to stay, to be included, to feel like I mattered to someone. David answered the door, and I could hear the sounds of family behind him, Patricia laughing at something, the kids talking excitedly about their Christmas plans, the warm chaos of a house preparing for the holidays. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I brought the presents," I said, holding up the carefully wrapped packages. "And I was wondering, I know you said it might be complicated, but could I maybe join you for Christmas dinner? I promise I won't be any trouble." David looked back into the house, then stepped onto the porch and partially closed the door behind him. The sounds of warmth and family were muffled now. "Mom," he said, and his tone was that patient, condescending voice I had learned to dread. "We've been over this. This year just isn't going to work out." "Please, David, it's Christmas. I just want to be with my family." He looked at me then with an expression I had never seen before, not anger, not frustration, but something worse. Indifference. "Mom, you need to understand something. This is Patricia's house, and she gets to decide who's invited, and frankly, Christmas dinner is for family only." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Family only? David, I'm your mother. You know what I mean, immediate family. The people who live here and Patricia's parents and her sister's family. People who are relevant to our daily lives." Relevant? I had become irrelevant to my son's daily life. "I raised you," I said quietly. "I gave up everything for you. I paid for your college, your wedding, I added you to the deed of my house. And I appreciate all of that, Mom, but that was your choice and this is my choice. Christmas dinner is for family only." He said it again, family only, as if I weren't standing right there, as if I hadn't earned the right to be considered family through 78 years of loving him. I stood there on his porch, holding presents I had carefully chosen for people who didn't want me around, and something inside me broke. Not my heart that had been breaking slowly for years, something deeper. Some fundamental belief I'd held about the nature of love and family and the bonds between mother and child. "I understand," I said, because it was all I could manage. "Good. Maybe we can get together after New Year's when things settle down." After New Year's, when the real family time was over and they could spare a few minutes for the old woman who had made it all possible. I handed him the presents and walked back to my car. As I was pulling out of the driveway, I saw him go back inside, and through the window I watched him rejoin his family, his real family, the people who mattered, the people who were relevant to his daily life. I drove home in a daze. Christmas was in 2 days, and I had no plans except to sit in my empty house and try not to think about how thoroughly I had failed as a mother. Because surely, if I had been a better mother, my son wouldn't treat me like a stranger. If I had been a better mother, I would have earned a place at his Christmas table. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had packed his lunches for 12 years, and tried to figure out where I had gone wrong. That's when I noticed the manila envelope on my counter. It had been delivered that morning, while I was at David's house being told I wasn't family. The envelope was from Patterson, Williams & Associates, the law firm that had handled Robert's will and the paperwork when I added David to my house deed. Inside was a letter from Mr. Patterson himself. "Dear Mrs. Morrison, as we discussed, I have completed the review of your property deed and financial records that you requested. I'm writing to confirm what we discovered in our research. As you suspected, the documents you signed 2 years ago did not simply add your son David to your property deed as he represented. The legal language in those documents actually transferred full ownership of your property to David Morrison, with you retaining only what is called a life estate. This means that while you have the right to live in the house until your death, David is the legal owner and has the right to make all decisions about the property, including the right to sell it. Additionally, our research shows that David has already taken out a significant home equity loan against the property, $85,000, without your knowledge or consent, which he has the legal right to do as the owner. I want to emphasize that this is not what you described wanting when you came to me originally. You told me you wanted to make things easier for your son if something happened to you. The documents David presented to you accomplished something very different. If you would like to discuss your legal options, please call my office to schedule an appointment. Sincerely, James Patterson-esque. I read the letter 3 times before its meaning fully sank in. My son had lied to me. He had tricked me into signing away my house, the house Robert and I had bought together, the house where I had raised David, the house that represented 40 years of our marriage and our dreams. And then he had borrowed $85,000 against my home without telling me. I sat there in my kitchen, in the house that was no longer legally mine, and I felt something I had never experienced before. Not just hurt, not just disappointment, but a cold, clear fury. My son had stolen my home and then told me I wasn't family. I spent that night going through every document in Robert's desk, every paper in our filing cabinet, every record of our 42 years together. And what I found made David's betrayal even worse. Robert had been more successful than I'd ever realized. While I was focused on being a wife and mother, he had been quietly building our future security. We owned not just our house, but 3 rental properties that Robert had bought over the years and managed himself. There was a life insurance policy I'd never known about, and a retirement account that had grown to over $200,000. Robert had never told me about the full extent of our assets because he wanted me to feel secure but not worried about money. He had planned for us to retire comfortably, to travel, to enjoy our later years together. After his death, David had helped me sort through the financial paperwork, and he had managed the rental properties for me. He said it was too complicated for me to handle myself, and I should let him take care of everything. Now I realized why he had been so eager to help. I called Mr. Patterson first thing the next morning, December 23rd. Mr. Patterson, this is Margaret Morrison. I received your letter yesterday, and I need to understand exactly what my son has done. Mrs. Morrison, I'm glad you called. Can you come in today? I think we need to review your entire financial situation, not just the house deed. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Mr. Patterson's office, learning the full scope of my son's betrayal. David hadn't just stolen my house. As my financial manager, he had been slowly draining the rental property accounts. He had taken out loans against 2 of the 3 rental properties. He had closed my retirement account and transferred the money to an account with his name on it. Over the past 2 years, my son had systematically stolen nearly $300,000 from me. Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Patterson said gently, your son has committed multiple crimes. This is fraud, elder abuse, and theft. You would be well within your rights to file criminal charges. What are my other options? Well, we can demand immediate restitution and the return of all properties to your name. If he refuses, we can file civil suits and still pursue criminal charges. The evidence is overwhelming. I thought about David's words from the day before. Family only, Christmas dinner is for family only. Mr. Patterson, I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to reverse everything my son has done. I want my house back in my name only, I want all the money returned, and I want control of my properties returned immediately. That's certainly possible. When would you like me to serve him with the papers? I looked at my watch. It was December 23rd, 2:30 in the afternoon. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. The day after tomorrow was Christmas, the Christmas dinner I wasn't invited to because I wasn't family. Serve him tomorrow morning, Christmas Eve. Mrs. Morrison, are you sure? Christmas Eve might seem. Mr. Patterson, my son told me yesterday that Christmas dinner is for family only. I want him to understand exactly who his family is. Christmas Eve morning, I got up early and made myself a proper breakfast. Coffee, eggs, toast with strawberry jam. I set the table with my good china, the china Robert and I had received as wedding presents, the china I had been saving for special occasions that never seemed to come. This was a special occasion. At 9:00 a.m., I called David. David, it's Mom. I was wondering if you could come over this morning. There's something I need to discuss with you. Mom, today is Christmas Eve. Patricia and I have a million things to do. It's important, sweetheart. It's about the house. I heard him sigh, what about the house? I'd rather discuss it in person. Could you please just come over? It won't take long. Fine, but I can only stay a few minutes. At 10:30, David knocked on my door. He looked impatient and distracted, checking his phone even as I let him in. Okay, Mom, what's this about? Patricia's waiting for me to pick up the Christmas Eve appetizers. Sit down, sweetheart. He remained standing. Just tell me what you need. That's when the doorbell rang. Excuse me, I said and opened the door to admit a very official-looking young man in a suit. Mrs. Margaret Morrison. Yes, I'm looking for David Morrison. David stepped forward, looking confused. That's me. David Morrison, you are being served with legal papers regarding fraud, elder financial abuse, and property theft. The young man handed David a thick envelope. You have been ordered to appear in court and to provide immediate financial restitution to Margaret Morrison for assets illegally obtained. Have a Merry Christmas. And then he left. David stood in my living room, holding the envelope, his face white as snow. Mom, what is this? Open it and find out. With shaking hands, he tore open the envelope and began reading. I watched his face change as he realized what he was looking at: documentation of every property he had stolen, every account he had drained, every lie he had told me. Mom, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain how you stole my house? How you took $85,000 in loans against the house where I live? How you drained my rental property accounts? How you stole my retirement money? I didn't steal anything. I was managing your finances because you couldn't handle them yourself. By lying to me about legal documents, by taking out loans without my knowledge, by moving my money into accounts with your name on them. David's face was cycling through emotions: shock, fear, anger, and something that might have been shame. Mom, you don't understand. Patricia and I have expenses. The kids are expensive. College tuition is going to be enormous. We needed. You needed my money, so you decided to take it. We were going to pay it back. When? After I died, after you sold my house and put me in some nursing home. David sat down heavily in Robert's chair. It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like. Tell me how stealing from your mother is justified. He was quiet for a long moment, reading through the legal documents. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed again. Now he looked calculating. Mom, you can't do this. If you file criminal charges against me, I'll lose my job. Patricia will leave me. The kids will grow up knowing their father is a criminal. You are a criminal, David. You stole from me. But I'm your son. And there it was, the thing he hadn't understood yesterday and didn't understand now. Yesterday, when I asked to join you for Christmas dinner, you told me it was for family only. You said I wasn't immediate family. You said I wasn't relevant to your daily life. David's face went even paler. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did mean it. You meant every word. And you know what? I realized you were right. I'm not your family. I'm just someone you've been stealing from. I walked to the window and looked out at the house across the street, where my neighbors were loading presents into their car, probably heading to a family Christmas where everyone was welcome. You want to know what's really sad about this, David? It's not the money. It's not even the house. It's that you could have had both. If you had just loved me, if you had just treated me like your mother instead of like a burden to be managed, I would have given you anything you needed. I turned back to face him. If you had said, Mom, Patricia and I are struggling with expenses, could you help us? I would have helped. If you had said, Mom, we're worried about the kids' college funds, I would have contributed. If you had said, Mom, we'd like to renovate the kitchen, could we borrow against your house? I would have said yes. David was staring at me, and for the first time in years, he seemed to be really seeing me. But instead, you decided to steal from me, and then you decided I wasn't even worthy of a place at your Christmas table. Mom, I'm not finished. You have 30 days to return every penny you've stolen from me. You have 30 days to transfer my house back to my name only. If you don't, I will file criminal charges and you will go to jail. You wouldn't do that to me. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, this person I had sacrificed everything for, this stranger who had stolen from me and then told me I wasn't family. Yesterday I wouldn't have. Yesterday I still believed you were my son, but you're not my son anymore. You're just a thief who happens to share my DNA. David left my house that morning without saying goodbye. I watched him through the window as he sat in his car for 10 minutes, probably calling Patricia, probably trying to figure out how to explain to his wife that their comfortable life had been built on stolen money. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. First Patricia, then David again, then Patricia again. I didn't answer. By evening, they had come to my house 3 times. I didn't answer the door. Christmas morning, I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, a house that would legally be mine again within 30 days, and I made myself a beautiful Christmas breakfast. I had coffee with real cream, eggs Benedict, and fresh orange juice. I ate off my good china and used the cloth napkins I had been saving. At 10 o'clock a.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Emma and Michael, my grandchildren, standing on my porch alone. I opened the door. Grandma, Emma said. She was 19 now, a sophomore in college. Can we come in? Of course, sweetheart. They came into my living room awkwardly, and I could see they had been crying. Grandma, we don't understand what's happening, Michael said. He was 17, a senior in high school. Dad said you're trying to get him arrested. I sat down across from them. These children I barely knew because their parents had kept us apart. Your father stole money from me, I said simply. A lot of money. And when I asked him to have Christmas dinner with your family, he told me it was for family only. Emma and Michael looked at each other. Grandma, Emma said quietly, we didn't know you wanted to come to Christmas dinner, we thought. We thought you preferred to be alone. Who told you that? Mom and Dad, they said you liked your independence, that you didn't want to be bothered with big family gatherings. I felt a new wave of sadness. My son hadn't just stolen my money, he had stolen my relationship with my grandchildren. I have never wanted to be alone, I told them. I have spent the last 7 years alone because your parents decided I wasn't welcome. We talked for 2 hours. I told them about their grandfather, about the stories their father had never shared with them. I told them about the sacrifices their father and I had made to give him the opportunities he'd had. And I told them about what he had done with the trust I'd placed in him. When they left, Emma hugged me tight. Grandma, we're going to fix this. On December 27th, David came to my house alone. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mom, please, can we talk? I let him in, but I didn't offer him coffee or ask him to sit down. Patricia wants me to fight this, he said without preamble. She thinks we can prove you were incompetent when you signed the documents, that you didn't understand what you were doing. And what do you think? I think, he ran his hands through his hair, I think I fucked up. I think I fucked up so badly that I don't know how to fix it. It was the first honest thing he'd said to me in years. You can start by giving me back what you stole. The money's gone, Mom. We spent it on the kitchen renovation and Patricia's car and the kids' school expenses. We've got maybe 30,000 left in savings. Then you'll get loans, you'll sell Patricia's car. You'll mortgage your future the way you mortgaged mine. And if I can't come up with all of it, I looked at this man who used to be my little boy, who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms, who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard like they were roses. Then you'll go to jail and Patricia will divorce you and your children will grow up ashamed of their father, just like you said. He was quiet for a long time. Why didn't you just give me the money when I asked? Because you never asked, David. You stole, there's a difference. But if I had asked, if I had been honest about needing help, I thought about that question. If you had asked, and if you had treated me like your mother instead of like a burden, I would have helped you. But that's not who you chose to be. He nodded slowly. What if I can get most of the money back? What if I can transfer the house back to your name? What if I can make this right? That's a start. And then what do we? Can we be family again? He nodded. David, I don't know. You didn't just steal money from me. You stole 7 years of my life. You kept me away from my grandchildren. You made me feel like I was worthless, like I was a burden, like I was irrelevant to your life. You're not irrelevant. Then why did it take a legal summons for you to realize that? He didn't have an answer for that. David did make it right eventually. It took him 3 months, but he returned all the money he had stolen. He took out loans, he sold Patricia's car, he borrowed against his 401k. Patricia was furious about the financial hardship, and their marriage went through a very rough period, but they survived it. More importantly, he signed documents returning full ownership of my house to me, and he relinquished all control over my finances. But the most important thing that happened was this. He brought Emma and Michael to see me regularly. Every Sunday we had dinner together, just the 3 of us at first, then eventually David joined us too. I learned that Emma was studying to be a teacher, just like I had wanted to be before I got married. I learned that Michael was an artist, and that he had inherited Robert's gentle hands and patient temperament. I learned that my grandchildren were kind, thoughtful people who had been told lies about why their grandmother was never around. Patricia took longer to come around. She was embarrassed about what David had done and angry about the financial consequences. But eventually, she started joining our Sunday dinners too. It turned out that she had been operating from a place of insecurity. She had been afraid that I disapproved of her, so she had worked to keep David and me apart. We had a long conversation about that, and while we'll never be close, we developed a respectful relationship. As for Christmas, last year I hosted Christmas dinner for the first time in 8 years. I cooked for 6 people instead of eating alone. Emma helped me make the apple pie, Michael set the table with my good china, and David carved the turkey just like his father used to do. During dinner, David raised his glass and said, I want to toast Mom for teaching me that family isn't just about blood. It's about love and respect and treating people like they matter. Patricia added, and for showing us that it's never too late to make things right. But Emma's toast was my favorite. She said to Grandma, for proving that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no more. I'm 81 now, and I've learned something important about family. Real family doesn't abandon you when you become inconvenient. Real family doesn't steal from you and then tell you you're not welcome at the table. Real family doesn't have to be convinced to love you, but sometimes people lose their way. Sometimes the people who should love you most need to be reminded of who you are and what you're worth. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to refuse to accept being treated badly. David learned that love isn't something you can take for granted. He learned that being someone's child doesn't give you the right to exploit them. And he learned that actions have consequences, even when they're committed against someone who loves you unconditionally. I learned that I was stronger than I thought I was. I learned that I deserved better than being treated like a burden. And I learned that sometimes, the only way to save a relationship is to be willing to lose it. Most importantly, I learned that when someone tells you you're not family, you should believe them, and then you should decide whether you want to prove them wrong or prove them right. In my case, I chose to prove them wrong. But it took a legal summons on Christmas Eve to get their attention. Sometimes, love requires boundaries. Sometimes, forgiveness requires consequences. And sometimes, the people who should treasure you most need to almost lose you before they remember why you matter. That Christmas Eve, when David told me that Christmas dinner was